John,
What's up, Gary? Marvel.
everyone. This is Wise Fools. Welcome to Wise Fools. That's John Brandon. I'm Gary Varvel, and this is not the Bible study you want. It's the Bible study that you need.
hmm Truer words were never spoken. Shout out to our gang of regulars. Doctor's
Our
here.
gang.
Sherry's here with a new profile picture that she drew using
Nice.
Procreate.
Procreate.
You know about
I'm
that.
a big fan of Procreate.
Nancy's here. Hi, Nancy. Let me see. There's some other people down. Christine, welcome. Dale, good to see you. Hi, Jack. Um, there's Ray. I haven't seen Ray for a
Ray.
while.
hmm
Good to have Ray back. There's Jeff and Marilyn.
Yep. Maryland's in the
Maybe
house.
maybe a few more.
Kevin
Kevin's here.
Thatcher.
Chance Rogers.
Chance.
Chance hasn't been here. But he's got a new job apparently that affords
Ah,
him the chance to join
congrats
us
on the
live.
new job.
So, welcome everybody. We are in Genesis. I wanted to say
Jeff
Galatians
Snodgrass. Jeff Snodgrass is here from
from
Joplin,
Missouri.
Missouri. So we're in Genesis chapter 30.
Oh, Ray was here last week. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, Ray. Yeah, we're in chapter 30 this week, and we have so much to cover.
Yeah, there's 43 verses, and so we're going to have to fly through it, and quite a tale through this whole bunch. We're going to have a lot of kids born tonight.
It is quite a it is quite a tale. Literal kids.
Yes,
No, actually, they're sheep, right? Sheep. What do you call? They're lambs, not kids.
I'm
Or are
talking
there
about the
goats?
children's. I'm talking about the humans that are going to be born tonight.
I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about goats, livestock.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let me pull it up here, and so it's going to be what 22 verses for one of us,
Yeah.
and 23 for the
Yeah. So
no 20 22 verses
no,
for one of us and 21 for the other one.
21 for the other.
Okay.
And we learned last week that we can't read. We can't
Yeah.
read a verse simultaneously. It didn't work.
Right. We
There's a
had the great
delay or
idea.
something.
I had the great idea that we would say it
In
as a
unison,
duet.
and it didn't
Yeah,
work.
and it was a disaster. So sometimes my ideas are really bad. All right, I'll go first, and I'll do
Okay.
I'll do I'll do 21 verses, and you can do
Very good.
22. All
I
right.
can do that.
Genesis 3:0. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I'll die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children?" Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my maidservant. Sleep with her, so that she can bear children for me, and that through her I can build a family." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "I have had a great struggle with my sister and have won." So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her maidservant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "What good fortune!" So she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "How happy I am! Women will call me happy." So she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too?" Very well, Rachel said. He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my maidservant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him six sons. So she named him Zebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah.
Then God remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. God has removed my disgrace, she said, and she named him Joseph. For she said, May the Lord add yet another son to my family. And soon after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, Please release me so I can go home to my own country. Let me take my wives and children, for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way. You certainly know how hard that I have worked for you. Please listen to me, Laban replied. I have become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you. Tell me how much I owe you. Whatever it is, I'll pay it. And Jacob replied, You know how hard I've worked for you, and how your flocks and herds have grown under my care. You had little indeed before I came, but your wealth has increased enormously. The Lord has blessed you through everything I've done. But now, what about me? When can I start providing for my own family? And what wages do you want? Laban asked him again. And Jacob replied, Don't give me anything. Just do this one thing, and I will continue to tend and watch over your flocks. Let me inspect your flocks today and remove all of the sheep and goats that are speckled or spotted, along with all the black sheep. Give these to me as my wages. In the future, when you check on the animals you have given me as my wages, you'll see that I have been honest. If you find any in my flock, any goats without speckles or spots, or any sheep that are not black, you will know that I have stolen them from you. All right, Laban replied. It will be as you say. But that very day, Laban went out and removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, or had any white patches, and all the black sheep. And he placed them in the care of his own sons, and who took them 3 days' journey from where Jacob was. Meanwhile, Jacob stayed and cared for the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took some fresh branches from poplar almond and plain trees and peeled off strips of bark, making them making them white streaks on them. And then he placed these peeled branches in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, for that was where they mated. And when they mated in front of the white streaked branches, they gave birth to young that were streaked and speckled and spotted. Jacob separated those lambs from Laban's flock, and at mating time he turned the flock to face the Laban's animals that were streaked or black. This is how he built his own flock instead of increasing Laban's. Whenever the stronger females were ready to mate, Jacob would place the peeled branches in the watering troughs in front of them, and they would mate in front of the branches. But he didn't do this with the weaker ones. So the weaker lambs belonged to Laban, and the stronger ones were Jacob's. And as a result, Jacob became very wealthy, with large flocks of sheep and goats and female and male servants, and many camels and donkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. There's lots of interesting things that happened in that text. Let's pray about it. Father, I pray that as we study and that you give us all wisdom in our discussion here and help us to be able to take away something here that would be encouraging to all of us. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. As we talked about last week, John, this is a very dysfunctional family, which should be an encouragement to all of us because we are all dysfunctional.
It
And
is.
the interesting thing is, even though they're dysfunctional, even though they're doing things that really ought not to be, God blesses them anyway.
We are less dysfunctional. My family is less dysfunctional than this patriarchal family.
Yes, and mine also.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm reminded, and I think somebody pointed it out maybe a week or so ago. Leviticus 18, I believe it is. It warns against. It says don't marry sisters. So you don't. And
Right.
here's exactly what Jacob did. So Moses, who comes much later, when he is given the law, one of the things that God says is don't marry sisters. And probably Jacob probably would say amen to that, because
Mm-hmm.
from the
Probably would
time
now.
that he got both of these women, remember when he got Leah by mistake. That's not who he wanted. This is an interesting point, John. So Jacob cheated Esau out of the birthright, the
Mm-hmm.
firstborn. And then Jacob, when he wanted the younger sister, he got cheated
Mm-hmm.
and was given the firstborn. That's not who he wanted, but that's who he got.
Right.
And so this would the world would say, well, this is karma. I think probably God allowed this. Hey, you're a trickster. I'm going to give you Laban, and Laban will trick you right back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not only did he get the two sisters, but then he got their handmaidens as well. So now he basically has four wives, and he has children by all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not normal.
Well, it's interesting to me that the original wives are the ones who take credit for bearing the children, even when the maidservants are bearing
Right,
them.
right.
It's just like
And that must have been a
my maidservant's
cultural,
giving me a son. Yeah.
it must be a cultural thing from that time period. But at the same time, I think, how did that culture get started? Is this some kind of holdover from the Babylonian era, where I mean, the Tower of Babel, and maybe things were going off the rails there? But
Well, but
it's go ahead.
don't we do that even in this culture now with
Yeah, we do.
surrogacy? We've
Yeah,
got
we do.
surrogacy where we have a different way. We don't normally, have the surrogate mother actually sleep with the father, but through the, artificial insemination and those processes,
Yeah,
we have other women bear children for the mothers.
right, right. And we've seen uh, gay men who hire that out,
We
surrogate
have.
women, and then
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Pete Buttigieg and his partner, they have two kids.
Hmm.
So that, yeah, I
Well,
could see a connection there with
yeah.
this. But the thing that blows me
So,
away is, I mean, in the New Testament, we're warned about fornication, adultery, all of that, all of those kinds of things, and here we just have it. And God, in fact, Rachel says when her maidservant gets pregnant and gives birth to a child, she said, "The Lord has blessed me."
right.
And so that's her perspective on that. And certainly they have another child, but and God, you know he incorporates all of these kids, these boys, as part of the 12, what becomes the 12 tribes of Israel. So um,
Hmm.
in the book of Revelation, we're going to see these 144,000, which the Bible describes as 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's where
Hmm.
you get the 144,000. They're all Jewish, and they all come from this family right here that we're looking at.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. You brought up Buttigieg, and Christine brought up Dave Rubin
Dave Ruman and
and
his husband is,
and his
his.
husband.
I hate saying husband, his partner. I know that the the,
Hmm.
the laws of the land now approve that, but and
Right.
Dave Rubin is a conservative, And so a lot of conservatives have gotten on board and said, "Oh yeah, what a great thing." But I saw a video by Mark Dice where Mark Dice really calls him out and says, "Hey, I thought we had some, standard principles here, and we're caving because the guy has some conservative viewpoints."
Yes, yes, and that was the point that I thought was worth mentioning is that
Yeah,
we're reading today about the this is a family that's been promised that God is going to give them a heritage. God is going to bless them. They're going to have numerous children, father of many nations, and so this is
yeah,
a covenant that has been established and is going to be a generational covenant. And the people who that covenant was established with repeatedly forget that that's God's promise that they can rely on, and they keep taking matters into their own hands. They keep
yeah, yeah,
one of their favorite tricks is to give their maidservant to their husband, and
yeah.
the husband then to impregnate the maidservant to help God along. Now, there is a possibility that that God had that in mind. I mean, God isn't surprised by the
No.
things that His people do. So it seems to me that God probably knew that this is what was going to happen, and so
Hmm.
He was going to fulfill His promise through this unorthodox,
Hmm.
faithless process. But that doesn't necessarily. The point is that people did not trust God to fulfill
Right.
that promise. They felt like they had to help Him along, and it's not that much different from what we're doing, in our culture when you've got two men
Hmm.
who are clearly not trusting. They're not trusting God
Mm-mm.
to fulfill them and to make them to give them a family because God didn't set it up that way. He didn't set it up
Hmm.
so that two guys or two girls
Hmm.
can produce a family. And so it's a different kind of faithlessness, but it's still faithless. It's
Right.
still it's
Right.
still me trying to establish my heritage, my legacy without God's blessing.
And that's what some of the comments that I see popping up here are saying too, that they didn't trust God. They decided to try to help God out and make this stuff happen.
Hmm.
And this goes right back to Abraham and Sarah. Sarah said, "Take my maidservant," and that's how the things began to go terribly wrong there. And the other thing that you notice too is we see a repetition within the family of the same mistakes being made. Abraham goes to Egypt and says, "Oh, this is my sister," and then Isaac does the same thing with Abimelech, and then now
Right.
we have the cheating um, uh, Esau out of the birthright. Then Jacob gets cheated, and Jacob gets cheated more than once, and then he's going to try to now we're going to find at the end of this chapter he's cheating Laban instead of trusting God in what he's doing. And God has
Hmm.
promised to bless Jacob because of that was the promise he made to Abraham. So he's got the blessing, and so everything he kind of touches seems to be, his flocks prosper and all of that.
Hmm.
Getting back to the 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 homosexual or same-sex marriage couples who are having children, these men,
Hmm.
the big thing that, and Mark Dice pointed this out, and I agree, and some of the people are mentioning it here. Those poor kids are going to grow up without a mom
Right. Right.
by not their choice. It's some kind of financial arrangement that was made so that they could get these kids. So these men have to raise these children, and so they will never know. Uh, they will never know God's perfect design. They're going to be raised with something else,
Hmm.
and that's and then but that's where our generation is going, and it's a problem. Jeff Lane mentions generational sin, and you kind of you can understand it by if you're raised in a home and this is what the parents are doing, the children are naturally going to pick up and do the same kinds of things. There's an old Eastern proverb that says that if the if the wife if the it's this if the mother eats onions and the father eats garlic, surely the children will stink. In other words, whatever habits the mother and father have, the children are going to pick right up on that and do the same kinds of things.
Hmm. Well, what's happening in our culture at a really rapid rate, it's just accelerated over the past 10 or 15 years, has
Yes.
been you're called an extremist if you call it a war on women. It's like, oh, that's hyperbole. You're just being dramatic. It's a war. But I don't know how else to think about it. If you've
I
got
agree.
two guys who are now able to, reproduce, and we're bringing a baby into that family without a mother. And what's fascinating to me is the number of women who are okay with this. The women who are
Yeah,
applauding it, good for them, good for them. It's like, do you do you not understand what's happening here? I mean, to say that to just shrug and go, you know what? All that matters is that they go into a family where they're loved. I've seen that so many times. The
oh
important
yeah,
thing is not whether they have a mother and a father. The important thing is that they have a family that loves them. And that's, I don't think that it's one or the other. I think, yes, you need to have a family that loves you, but you also need a mother and a father because that is the way God intended it to be.
I
And
agree.
if you are eliminating the mother from the equation, things are going to be out of balance. And we've been eliminating the fathers from the equation for a long, long time, but
Right.
differently. Divorce is the primary reason that fathers are wiped out of the equation. It's not necessarily because the mothers are in a homosexual relationship. It's because the
Hmm.
mothers are in sometimes multiple, heterosexual relationships, and so the father is gone. But once we arrive at a general consensus in the culture that, you know what, mothers women are not really necessary for anything except surrogacy. They're necessary for contributing half of the chromosomes in the birth of a child, and that's the end of the role that women need to play in the lives of babies.
Well, John, wasn't it just not very long ago, just a few years ago, that we were being told that men weren't necessary,
Hmm.
that the women, raise the children and you don't need a father around.
Right.
I mean, that just was just a couple of years ago, and now it seems like the script has been flipped. Uh, and the bottom line is, what we are seeing in our culture is just a is a generation that is godless. And we see these people who get promoted, we see them on TV all the time, and they're godless, living an ungodly life. And somehow, some way, cancel culture and the culture in general, we have gotten to the place where you can't speak the truth
Hmm.
because now evil is good and good is evil. So if you try to point out the emperor has no clothes, you're the bad guy
Right.
and you have to be hushed up. I thought it was interesting that in the Marsha Blackburn, uh, in the Senate hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson,
Hmm.
asked the question, "Can you define what a woman is?" She said, "No, she can't define it.
Right.
I can't tell you what a woman is."
Right.
Well, come on. Now, we all know what a woman is. We know what a man is. It's obvious. Even if a child can tell you the difference. But now there's this fear that I can't say the obvious, right?
Right. How do you know so
Yeah,
much about
yeah,
this if
that's
you're not
right.
a
And that
biologist?
was,
Yeah.
yeah, Nerd Mom says, and that was what Jackson said. I'm not a biologist. I just did a cartoon where I've got the a little child in a classroom, and
Hmm.
she's handing the paper back to the teacher, and says, "I can't answer these questions. I'm not a biologist."
Hmm.
And then I captioned it, "A future Supreme Court justice," right here.
There you go.
Uh,
Nominate
so
her.
all you young students out there, you can get out of the test by just saying, "I can't answer this. I'm not a biologist."
Well, isn't that the progression though? I mean, doesn't it start with a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. It starts there, and then progresses through a few
Yes,
decades, and then we get to the point where two guys can have a baby. Men can get pregnant now in our
yes,
culture, according to some people, and so
I know.
and
That's
now
what
we
they say.
yeah,
But
well we
but
lit
actually, it's a biological woman who says that she's a man, and then she gets pregnant. I mean, it's still they're trying to play with the language here, but the bottom line is that the truth is still truth. They can say it's not, but it is.
right, but
Jeff
truth
Lane
is
said that it. Jeff Lane said it's ironic that feminists support transgender agenda, and now men are excelling in women's sports uh, and causing
yeah,
women to be put at a disadvantage. Yes,
right,
and I thought about doing a cartoon. You have boys and they have tryouts for like sports,
hmm,
and the kids that don't make the team, well, then they can just go get on get on the girls' team. You could you can't play. You're not good enough for the boys' team, but you go play on the girls' team, and then they could just dominate.
right, right. Biden
I
said he
think what they
nominated a
need to
black woman.
do.
That's a good point.
I think what they need to do is they need to have their own league. How about that? That
That
transgenders have their own
transgender.
league.
What would
Yeah,
that be though? How would that work?
I don't know. Just look, you have to declare at the beginning of the season, I'm going to be a transgender or I'm going to be a man or a woman, and then you just. But you can't like. I think back in the
How would
olden
that be
days.
different than what they're? How would that be different than what's happening
Well,
now?
it'd be like a transgender. You can't play on a girls' team if you're a transgender. You have to play on a transgender team. They'd have a specific team for them. You
I
can't say you're a
I
girl
I hear what you're saying, but I
actually
think
biologically a girl.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that would be a mistake because that would be legitimizing the facade that there is such a thing as transgender, that you've got men
No,
and female
I
and
get what you're
transgender.
saying. I get what you're saying, but if if they want to be different, then they got to be on a different team. You can't pick your teams.
But they're
But
not different.
this goes back when like the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts, they had to drop boys out of it, so it's just Scouts because they had to admit girls
Right,
to it. Well, come on,
right.
and this goes to what
But
Dennis
what is a
Prager
girl,
said.
Gary? What is a girl? Who are these
Biologically,
beings?
well, I can think we can
Who are
talk
these beings that
biologically.
we are inducting into the Scouts? What are they? A Supreme Court justice can't tell me what they are. And so if we're getting back to the text, we're seeing the results of faithlessness. This has been coming for a long
Yes.
time, and
Yeah.
now it's funny. I don't know how else to respond to it other than I could sit in sackcloth and ashes. That seems appropriate, but laughter. I mean, think about this, my friends. This is a person who is being considered as a Supreme Court justice. This is a person who's
Yeah.
going to be nominated for life to the Supreme Court, which is a branch of the federal government in the most powerful nation on earth. And this is a person who says she cannot define what a woman is, but because she's not a biologist, she's a judge. And so
Yeah.
think about that for a second. I can't define what a woman is, but I'm going to sit on the court in the
Right.
highest court in the land and pass judgment on the law, being unable to define what a male or what a female is, what a woman is. That's That's
So
insanity.
therefore,
That's
so
completely
therefore,
nuts.
no, it is. And so when let's say a Roe v. Wade case comes before her, well, she can't make the decision because she's not a biologist.
Hmm.
I can't tell you if it's human or not because I'm not a biologist.
Hmm.
But this is what she's going to be asked to make decisions about.
Right.
Yeah, Christine's right, and everybody knows that. It's
Right.
not that she can't; she won't do it because she knows that there's going to be backlash, and so she just doesn't want to answer the question.
Right. But what's
Now,
crazier?
so
What's
what should have
crazier?
happened?
Is it crazier to believe that there's no definition for men and women, or is it crazier to know the definition but be afraid but not say it because you're worried about what the crazy people are going to say? I mean, which is crazier?
Well, how else do you explain that she wouldn't answer the question?
Well,
Now,
that's how.
what I would have liked to have seen happen was if Blackburn would have said, "I think, Judge, you are lying. I think what you just said is a flat out lie. You know what a woman is, and you don't want to say it."
Right.
And
Right.
I would say I want to put it on the record right now. She just lied in this testimony. We caught her. Everybody sitting here knows that she's a woman.
Well, it would be uh, excellent if some of the lawmakers and some of the interviewers would dig a little deeper than they do. And the
Yeah,
problem is, I was
yeah.
having a
Well,
conversation with Gabe Wrench.
they go with what's written for them. That's about all they do.
Well, this is what he said. He said just a couple hours ago we were recording our water break, and he said I would have asked her, "Well, what are you?"
Yeah, right.
And that would have been a slam dunk
Oh,
to have
sure.
her to have she what would she say? What would she say if Blackburn had said, "Okay, well then what are you? Are you a man
Yeah.
or a woman?" And then because how do you know? Um, it's
I'm not a biologist. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know
I can't tell you if I'm a man or a woman. She would in order to continue the narrative, she would have to say, "I can't tell you if I'm a man or a woman." And can you
she
imagine
would
how
she
nuts
would
that would be?
that would have been nuts. Oh man, if we could have only gone there, that would have been great. I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah. But
Oh, so anyway,
you know, we don't do that. We're too nice.
so I think
Let them off the hook.
we've beaten that thing. We've beaten that monster to death. But getting back to our dysfunctional family here, Jacob's got 4 wives. Now he's got children like coming out crazy, like crazy. He's having kids.
Somebody said she did
I
say she
don't.
was a woman.
We don't know how. We don't know how many years pass here. We know that Jacob had to work another 7 years. So in this chapter, he tells Laban, "Hey, I need to provide for my own family because he's been working for free for 14 years, and he got what did he get? He got 4 women out of it, 4 wives basically."
Yep.
Um, Notice that one of the things that, and this is kind of sad, but Leah keeps kind of praying that Jacob will love her because she's giving him all these children. She keeps
Mm.
coming back to that. And I think that's an important thing about, let's men, I'm talking to the men right now. Husbands, love your wives, and you can't tell them that you love them enough every day. I mean, it's something that we all want to be loved, and we want someone to love. But I think that there's great, I think there's great comfort and security in just hearing it being said. And so that was one thing I would take away from that. The other thing I found interesting was at some point in this, this chapter here we see, is when we get to the mandrakes.
Uh-huh.
And when I think of mandrakes, I think of Harry Potter because those mandrakes they
The
scream
screaming.
at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know about this. I don't think these were screaming. But so Rachel wanted the mandrakes. Now at this point, she must have some say about who Jacob is with because they make a barter, basically. Hey, give me your son's mandrakes, and I'll let you sleep with Jacob.
Hmm.
And then Leah goes to him and says, I purchased you for the night. Now, what's that? That's prostitution, basically. I know you're married, but we're bartering now. This is so strange. And they also they're praying to God, and then they go and they do this. So this is really a head scratcher. I think the one thing that I said at the top that's kind of encouraging is that I guess I'm not perfect, and God has recorded a really goofy relationship here with this family, and still He blesses them.
Right.
And I think eventually, the idea is that maybe you're going to get better. We should be. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, about how do we grow in our walk with the Lord. Now, they didn't have the scriptures back then. So every once in a while, the Lord would show up and talk to one of them. They would, build an altar, and they would pray, and they would offer sacrifice, occasionally. Mm-hmm. But we have much more benefits now because we can go through the scriptures and read. We can see the mistakes that God has pointed out here to us. Hey, don't be like this, really. I bless them, but don't do this in your own family. And still, I think that the course of time, by reading and praying and just God will change our thinking. Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2, transform our way of thinking so that we become more like Christ. And that's the whole goal.
I think that one of the things that's helped me kind of wrap my head around Old Testament stuff is is when I remember that religion, Christianity, Judaism was primitive back then. It was just getting rolling. And if you go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, you're in a garden where literally there is nothing you can do that is outside of the will of God, except for eat from this tree. There's one thing that you can do. Yeah. Everything else is fair game. You can eat what you want. You can do what you want. This is your place. God comes down and talks to you. And so going from direct communion with God to isolation from God, and now the reality of sin in the planet is it's not going to be an instantaneous change. It's going to be a gradual progression as mankind learns how to live in a world now that is fallen. And so the patriarchs, as you said, they didn't have the scripture, and at this point they didn't even have the Ten Commandments. And thinking about the Ten Commandments,
they also when I was a kid, the Holy Spirit. They didn't have the Holy Spirit residing in them either.
Correct. So when I was a kid, and I would hear about the Ten Commandments, and Moses went up on the mountains, and God gave them the Ten Commandments. And what are they? It's like, you're not supposed to have gods before me. You're not supposed to take the Lord's name in vain. You're not supposed to kill people. You're not supposed to lie. And when I was a kid, I was like, why does God have to tell them that? Why does Moses have to go up on a mountain to be told that you're not supposed to lie? Everybody knows you're not supposed to lie, right? Everybody knows you're not supposed to commit adultery. But they didn't. You have got a different sort of morality taking place, among Laban and Jacob and Esau, and all of those characters are tricking each other. They're lying to each other. They're giving their maidservant. They're passing their maidservants around. Why? Because they didn't have the same rules that we have.
Right.
God hadn't given them to them yet.
One other thing I thought was interesting in this text is that when Rachel complains to Jacob that you won't give me any children, and he snaps at her. I mean, this is the woman he loves the most of the four. Right. And he snaps at her. Who am I? Am I God? God's the one who's keeping you from having children, not me. He's trying hard here. I'm trying. But how else do you explain it? I mean,
I got the mandrake. But I got all kinds of mandrake here. It ain't making it happen.
So anyway, and then Rachel finally has a child. She finally has Joseph.
Hooray! Yep.
Yay. So the Lord remembered her, and he remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children. This is verse 22.
Yep.
She became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and she says, God has removed my disgrace. Yeah, in that day and age, if you couldn't have children, it was disgraceful. I mean, it was an
Right.
embarrassment, obviously.
Yep.
And I find it interesting that in our generation, it seems to be, the generation younger than us are having less and less kids. The population, I think, in UK has been decreasing because there's more people dying than are being born.
And why is that? We have
I don't
not
know.
valued. Well, we don't have the same.
Well,
We're not. We're not esteeming women for the same things that
Yeah.
they esteem them for. They esteemed women for doing what? For bearing children. Why? Because guys can't bear children.
Yeah, right.
You know, if the women don't
Yeah.
bear children, then that's the end of it. And so that was the purpose of women. And now, if you suggest to many women, your purpose is to bear children, your purpose is to establish a household and to create children. Yeah, what's going to happen?
Wow. You're going to get attacked.
Right.
Which, yeah, what you have just said is exactly true. That used to be such an honor, and now it's like, oh, that's what you think of me? I should be barefoot and pregnant and in the kitchen? Is that what you think?
Is that what
I
you
didn't say
is that all I'm good for? Is just bearing
Yeah.
children and raising children? And
I have thanked my wife so many times about, just for the fact that she bore our 3 kids and gave them to us and gave them to us, because I can't imagine life without them. I mean, I love them so much, and it's been such a joy to be a dad. And I can't do that alone. I
No.
mean, I'm not like Pete Buttigieg or Dave Rubin,
the at the same
who
same
didn't do it
time
alone
as-
either. They had to pay for it.
It's not the other side of the coin, but it's kind of it's on the same coin. That there is an attitude of I don't want to say shame, but within the church that that women who don't bear children, women who do not become mothers and don't make it a priority, even within the church, there is sort of a, well, you know what, that's fine. If you're not going to have children, if you're called to do something else, you're going to be in the military, or if you're going to have a career, or whatever, that even within the church, we're very careful to make sure that we don't communicate to women that we expect them to have babies. It's right. We
That's
don't
right.
we
You're
don't want
right.
to we don't want to insult them by suggesting that, if they stay home and take care of children, that they couldn't do more with their lives. And that's within the church. That's not just outside. That's in the church as well.
I know. I agree.
So we don't encourage women to have babies anymore.
Yeah. And of course, then we have all the abortion, which I think is on the decrease in America, but still, I think it's like an average of 6 million worldwide every year, abortions. That's it's all of these factors that I see happening right now in the world that I think we're getting close to the end. John, I haven't said that in a week or so. I thought I'd throw it in again. I think we're getting close to the end. The Lord's coming back. I can see the birth pains are happening.
Yeah. Well, I have said before, I hope you're right.
Yes.
I don't think you are, but I hope you are.
Yeah.
When you have a culture, particularly when you have a Christian culture that is not comfortable standing up and declaring, no, I'm right about this, and you're wrong about this, that's when things get really bad. And we have a culture now that is not encouraging women to stay home and have babies. We're not encouraging people to stay married if they're not happy. And we're okay with transgender people and homosexual people doing whatever they want. We're okay with them having children, quote unquote. We're okay with them getting married. We're okay with them not getting married, but establishing loving relationships with each other, because the most important thing is that there's love, not that there's truth. all of those things combined make it so that there really is not much hope for people because the church isn't doing its job. The church has acquiesced our what we know to be true. We've thrown out biblical principles and biblical teaching in order to get along with and be friends with the people who most need to hear the truth. We are
Right.
we're friends with lost people. We're not rescuing lost people. We're just
Yeah.
befriending them.
So this past week, you saw that Babylon Bee was suspended from Twitter
Mm-hmm.
because they said that their man of the year was Rachel Levine.
Right.
It's actually a man who says that he's a woman.
It's
Whatever
the
that
Surgeon
is.
General, right? He's the Surgeon General.
It's
currently.
the assistant to the Surgeon General, I think. It's
Okay.
not she. Yeah, is the Surgeon
Oh,
General?
that's right. The
I don't
Surgeon
know,
General is
something.
a different guy. You're right. But
Yeah.
he's
So-
some sort of
And then,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's. So USA Today made Rachel Levine one of their Women of the Year, and so then Babylon
Uh-huh.
Bee made him their Man of the Year, and because they said the truth, Twitter kicked him off. So then
Right.
Charlie Kirk repeated that Babylon Bee picked him because he is a man, and he basically went through his history. He said, he was a man for 54 years and had this many children, and then he decided he's a woman, and now he's this. And because he spoke, everything he said was true. But he got kicked off Twitter for the same reason.
as well. Right.
That's where we are. You can't speak the truth. And it reminds me of Isaiah 59. I think it's verse 14 and 15. It talks about what's happened to Israel at that time. And it says that truth has fallen in the street, and justice and equity can't get through because truth has fallen. And the only answer is to stand truth back up. Now, this generation doesn't want to hear the truth. They would
Right.
rather hear a lie. But we can't. I think we have to take a stand and not cave to that. Look, that's a man, and that's a man racing other women in a girls' swim meet, and she beats them by the length of a pool. And why is anyone surprised? He's a foot taller than everybody. His arms are his wingspan is like 8 feet. And so, and at the same time, he's faster than the women, but he's like 424 or something in men's, so he was
It was
not
worse
even,
than that. It was like
he
460 or 80.
compete. He couldn't compete. And so then he switches over, and then we're all supposed to go, yeah, that's okay. Did you see the woman in the stands arguing with some guy with a mask?
Yeah.
And so the great line was, he said, "Are you a biologist?" He said that to her.
Right.
And she said, "That's ridiculous. I don't have to be a vet to know what a dog is."
Right. I'm not a
You're
vet,
right.
but I know what a dog is.
I know
Right.
So
Here's what I'm kicking around in my head. I think there's a possibility that getting banned from Twitter and banned from Facebook and all of the canceling and all of the censorship that's taking place out in the world, I think there's a possibility that is God ordained, in that God established his church as the light of the world.
Yes.
And that's not to say that we can't be active on social media and that we can't do some sort of preaching on social media, on YouTube and so on. But it is interesting to me that the gatekeepers of those platforms are really quick to shut down influential people who are saying true things. Now, I don't get shut down because I don't have any influence on social media. So I get away with saying stuff, and for the most part, they don't, unless somebody reports me. And I'm suspicious that maybe God is allowing this censorship to happen so that people who are paying attention can go, wow, look at the tyranny. Look at how afraid they are of letting people speak. Where am I going to go to find the truth? Well, you're going to have to go back to church. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to go on social media. You're not going to be able to go on YouTube. You're not going to be able to go on the internet because the people that control that that stream shut it down. And so you're going to have to go back to the source, which is the source that God established as His church. That's where the truth will be heard, if
Good
that
point.
church is biblical. Now, there's a lot of churches that aren't, but I think
Christine
there's a
said
remnant.
that we're to speak truth in love, and I agree. And she said that sometimes people speak truth not in love. But it sounds like it's vengeance, and that's true. But I think that in the case of Babylon B, they're just having fun, and I think what they're doing is I think that's needed. It's kind of what I try to do. I try to poke fun at things, and
Mm-hmm.
I had in my newsletter earlier this week that I posted this thing about it's just a drawing about Jesus in the boat with the disciples, and he stopped the storm, and the depiction that's in the scripture about when he did that, noting that he has authority and power over nature. And I listed in there that there's at least three reasons why I'm not afraid of climate change. One, Christ is controlling everything, according to Colossians chapter 1, 15 through 17. And so I don't have to worry about that. And so anyway, I got tagged. Facebook put a tag over it saying, for more information on climate change, you have to click on it to get more
Mm-hmm.
info, because I mentioned the two words climate change in the
Mm-hmm.
text.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Right.
So you can't even make a point that has really nothing to do with climate change other than I'm not worried about it. That's all they said. I don't fear it and I'm not worried about it.
Right.
And it's so weird.
Well,
We live in
well,
weird
it's
times.
those are algorithms, not people, that do all of that.
Yeah,
And
but they've set them
yeah,
up.
well, I was going
I
to
was
say
going to
that I
give.
was
Go
comment
ahead.
on the speak the truth in love, because that scripture gets brought up quite a bit in conversation. For some reason, that scripture gets brought up to me quite a bit, and I do. I do believe that we have an obligation to speak the truth and to do it gently. And one of the things that I always try to explain to people is that I don't talk the same way face to face or in small groups of people that I talk when I'm addressing a general public audience. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking to the public, when I'm blogging or when I'm doing a video and I'm talking to basically nameless, faceless masses, it's different than when I'm talking, one on one with people.
Yeah.
And so the accusation of, you're so hard and you're so unmovable, and you won't listen to other people's points of view, and you're just, there's no compassion and there's no gentleness in the things that you say. Right, that's because I'm talking to nobody specifically. I'm just putting
Mm-hmm.
I'm just putting the truth out, and if
Yeah.
the shoe fits, wear it.
Right.
And it's
Right.
really difficult sometimes for people to imagine that there's two different ways of setting your tone, and the tone is different when I'm not talking to
Mm-hmm.
you specifically than when you and I are having a face-to-face conversation.
Well, I
So,
just recently was contacted by somebody who I know, and I won't say who it is because I don't have their permission, but they had posted something on their social media, and somebody commented and said, "Well, you have a problem with this? Do you have a problem with Gary Varvel's cartoons? Because he pokes fun at people too."
mm,
And so then he contacted me and said, "Hey, just let you know that somebody mentioned you and just wanted to get your take on it." And he said, "I think I know what it is." So, and then I respond by saying that um, look, the way I view this is that you have a ministry that's different than my ministry. My ministry
mm-hmm,
is to point the finger at people in power, and just pretty much like John the Baptist did with Herod.
mm-hmm,
He called him out, just like Jesus did with the Pharisees, and he called them snakes and whitewashed tombs, and called them, you're of your father the devil, and he was a murderer from the beginning. And
right,
those are strong words, but sometimes people need that, but that's been kind of my ministry. Now I don't do it quite as boldly as that, but I think that that's what God has given me to do. I can't explain it any other way. And if I get to
Right.
heaven, God says, "Wow, that's not what I wanted you to do at all." Well, I don't know how you explain how I got to do the job, because it's so hard to get the position. I mean,
Right.
there were, when I got interested in this back in the '70s, there were only 200 newspapers who even had a cartoonist that hired their own cartoonist. And today
Mhm.
I imagine there's less than 12. I haven't counted up the newspapers, but there's very
Yeah.
few that do it. And so, and I don't even have a home newspaper anymore. So I'm working freelance,
Right.
but that's just, it's, what has God called you to do? And God hasn't called me to do everything. Some people have the ministry of just loving people and trying to help them through their hard times. Mine is focused at the people who are in power and saying, "What are you doing? You're killing us here.
Right.
Stop it.
Right.
The inflation is killing us. Your decisions are making it hard for us to live."
Right. Well, there's a Ray brings up a good point. Speaking the truth in love, the problem is that we can't agree on what love means, and that's
Oh,
that's
that's good.
that's
We can't
true.
we can't agree on what a woman is.
Well, that's true. Not all of us. I had a conversation with one of my daughters this just a couple of days ago about this very topic, and Tabby won't care if I talk about her. But she's a person who is really, really sensitive about hurting other people's feelings and offending other people.
Hmm.
I'm not. And what happens with sensitive people is that when they say the truth, when they speak the truth to another sensitive person, that sensitive person is going to have feelings probably because the truth is just hard. And
Hmm.
when Tabby takes on the responsibility of the other person's reaction to the truth, it's it's bad for everybody. That's when the
Hmm.
relationships start to suffer because the other person has a tendency to sort of blame you for how they feel about the truth. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy for them because they're putting the blame in the wrong spot, and it's not healthy for you if you let that happen. If you take that on and go, "Oh, you know what? They're right. I should have said that differently. I could have said it gentler. I could have done something to so that they wouldn't have had a bad feeling about this thing that I said." Sometimes you can't. It's just you just have to say true things. And the parable of the sower, I think, is what Jesus was trying to tell us. And the sower just goes out and throws seed, and some of it lands on soil where it grows, and some of it lands on soil where it doesn't grow.
Yeah.
But the sower just keeps throwing it everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we a lot of times want to go and prepare the soil. We want to go back and
Yeah.
and monkey with the soil because we
Hmm.
feel bad because oh no, the plants aren't growing. That's my fault. I need to pull the rocks out, and
Hmm.
get this soil ready to go because and that's it creates a lot of anxiety for sensitive people because
Hmm.
they feel bad when people react badly to the truth.
Hey,
So,
Ray put up Proverbs 26:7. I think everybody should see that. That's pretty good. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. That's true.
hmm
Last thing I want to get to, I mean, we're out of time, but I want to get to this is at the very end of this chapter, something very puzzling, and that is the whole speckled goats, sheep thing that Jacob does with these branches. He strips the bark off so they're streaked, and then he
hmm
puts it in the watering troughs, and as the and then he would get the strong males or strong females to get the water, and then he would have um, he said that's where they mate. And if they mated in front of the water trough with the sticks and the streaks, then their offspring would have those speckles. And of course, he had made the deal with Laban that, all the spotted sheep, speckled sheep, the black sheep, I'll take those. You can have all the good ones. You can have all the white ones. And then he tried to, and so right off the bat, so once they agree to that, Laban, the first thing he does is he tells his sons, go get all the speckled sheep and take them 3 days journey away from here. So he steals all those that Jacob said he would have. That's okay. Jacob's just going to start from scratch. And as they start having speckled, but then what he was doing was this whole thing with the branches. And the Bible tells us that this happened, but it has no explanation. So I looked up on gotquestions.com.
You looked up the speckled sheep in the poplar branches?
So did you see this? So that they really don't have an explanation other than this. It says this.
Yes, that's an old goat breeding trick, Gary.
Are you showing this? So this is what it says: is there's an ancient breed of sheep still raised today is the Jacob sheep, which has a distinction of having multicolored fleece. The black and the white spotted wool is highly prized for hand spinning or robing. This breed of sheep is called Jacob sheep because some of the trace its origin to the story of Jacob's selection of breeding the sheep in Genesis 30. But there's really still no explanation of why this would work. It doesn't make any sense, but it did. And then so because he was taking the strongest females and stripping the bark off these sticks and sticking them in the water, then they gave birth to spotted sheep, and then he got those were his. And his flocks started growing like crazy, and everything he did worked. I don't know why it worked, but it worked. Maybe and what we were saying before the show, before the Bible study, I should say, is that surely Jeff Lane knows why. I don't know.
We figured
Jeff usually has a good answer for these things.
We figured Jeff would know.
I'm not a sheep herder.
I think,
or breeder.
That we've had several discussions now, and several times God has taken barren women and brought children forth from them. And we don't go, well, or we say, well, that's just God. That was God's plan. And so I think that the poplar branches and all of the watering thing, and it was just a thing that Jacob did, but I don't know that it had any real bearing on. I mean, God was going to do that anyway, and
I think you're right. So that's the deal that he made with Laban, and then God was just going to give the sheep that were speckled and spotted, so that he continues to bless Jacob. But Jacob must have had some kind of superstitious idea that if he does this, and then he could equate the two together. But the Bible doesn't say that that's what happened. That made that happen. It doesn't.
No, it just says that's what he did.
Yeah, and scientifically, it doesn't make any sense. It just seems like a superstitious thing to do, which I think that there's a lot of that superstition thing that's going on in this chapter.
Well, you had Laban who took all of the speckled sheep, away. He basically took them all away. So so both of them were they were both trying to manipulate the outcome, and I think that it's just a matter of God said this is what's going to happen, and so he made it happen.
If they were playing poker with one another, they'd have both been cheating.
Right.
So but God blessed him, and so the next week we're going to see Jacob finally make a break. It'll be interesting
after a long loss. All right,
this has been fun. This has been an interesting little discussion. Went kind of everywhere, but
we did sort of go around about. But
so be encouraged if you're in a dysfunctional family. Be encouraged. God can bless you too. He blessed this group. This is wild.
Yeah, if you're in a dysfunctional family, be encouraged, but we would also recommend that you not give your maidservant to your husband.
No, don't do that. And don't continue replicating, don't keep repeating the mistakes of your family in the past. You can stop that. So like, and
Break
that,
the cycle.
that is for instance, I'll just throw this out. That's the ministry of Shepherd Community. Shepherd Community is in the Near East side of Indianapolis, and they minister to the people in that area, specifically children. And the idea is that uh, we want to try to reach the kids who are in generational poverty, and we want to help them get the mentality that you don't have to continue this trend of always being stuck in poverty. You can find the path to hope. You can find upward mobility, and here are some things that we can do to help you get that. You're going to get an education, and you're going to have to work hard, and then they bring in mentors from the outside so that they can see, oh, because we always, I did this too when I was young. I saw certain individuals who were on the path that I thought, well, I want to be like them. I found cartoonists and I thought, I want to be like that guy. How did he get there? I want to find out how to follow that path to get where he's going. But a lot of times people who are stuck in poverty, generational poverty, they don't know of anybody who's gotten out of it. So they have no hope for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And this chapter is a clear indication to all of us that you don't have to continue doing what these people did here. You can break. Maybe that's why Joseph had to go away, because he needed to be separated from his family. We'll get to that in a couple
I
of
can think of
chapters.
a couple of good reasons why that might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We'll see.